Jake Morrison stood in the vast chamber of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime and felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling in his chest. The massive dome stretched above him like a crystal cathedral, its walls gleaming with the light of 1,000 distant stars. Around him sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy, each species represented by delegates who had ruled the stars for thousands of years, before humans had even learned to make fire. The Zeltharian Chancellor raised one of his 4 crystalline arms, and the chamber fell silent. His body sparkled like cut diamond in the artificial light, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 10,000 years of galactic dominance. Behind him, holographic displays showed the wealth and power of his empire, star systems. That had been under Zeltharian control since before Earth had developed complex life. "Ambassador Morrison," the Chancellor said, his voice carrying across the chamber without need for amplification. "Once again, humanity comes before this council with requests that show your species lacks the wisdom that comes with age. You ask for equal representation, yet your species has existed in galactic society for barely 15 years. You request trading rights in sectors that have been managed by elder species for millennia. Most concerning of all, you seek permission to establish colonies in the Outer Rim, territories that we have deliberately left unclaimed for good reason." Jake kept his face neutral, though inside he felt the anger building. 15 years of this same conversation. 15 years of being told that humans were too young, too inexperienced, too dangerous to be given the same rights as other species. He glanced at Lisa Parker, his aide, who sat behind him taking careful notes of every word. Her pen moved steadily across the digital tablet, recording yet another session of systematic humiliation. The aquatic Morgani delegates floated in their var. Massive water tanks, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in complex sequences that Jake had learned to read over the years. Right now, the patterns spelled out amusement mixed with disdain. To them, humans were land-dwelling primitives who had stumbled into space travel through luck rather than wisdom. Their civilization had mastered the oceans of 100 worlds, while humans were still living in caves. The insectoid Crick Queen clicked her mandibles in a rhythm that Jake recognized as dismissive laughter. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like black mirrors, and her 6 arms gestured in the ritual movements that indicated contempt. The Crick had built hive cities that spanned entire continents, their social order perfected over millions of years of evolution. To them, human attempts at democracy and individual rights were nothing more than chaos disguised as civilization. "The Outer Rim," continued the Chancellor, "remains unclaimed because it serves as a buffer zone between civilized space and the unknown, dangers that lurk beyond our borders. To allow a species as aggressive and unpredictable as humanity to establish colonies, that would be irresponsible. Your people have demonstrated time and again that they solve problems through violence rather than negotiation." Jake felt his jaw tighten. The accusation of violence was particularly galling, coming from species that had fought wars, spanning centuries before humans had even joined galactic society. The Zeltharians themselves had conquered dozens of worlds through military force, but apparently, when they did it, it was called bringing order. When humans defended themselves or their colonies, it was labeled as dangerous aggression. Furthermore, the Chancellor went on, "Your species has shown a disturbing tendency toward technological advancement without proper consideration of consequences. In just 15 years, you have developed weapons and ships that rival designs perfected over millennia by elder species. This rapid progress suggests a reckless approach to innovation that could destabilize the careful balance we have maintained." The other delegates murmured their agreement. The Vorthic representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with colors that indicated approval of the Chancellor's words. The plant-like Chlorians rustled there, leaf-covered forms in a sound that served as their equivalent of applause. Even the mechanical synthetics, who rarely showed emotion, flashed their optical sensors in patterns that suggested concurrence. Jake looked around the chamber at faces and forms that had become all too familiar over the years. These beings ruled over territories that spanned thousands of light years. Their empires controlled the trade routes that connected the civilized galaxy. Their fleets patrolled the space lanes and enforced the laws that kept peace between the stars. And every single one of them looked at humanity as nothing more than upstart children who needed to be kept in their place. "Ambassador Morrison," the Chancellor said, drawing Jake's attention back to the present moment. "The decision of this council is final. Humanity's request for expanded colony rights is denied. Your petition for equal representation is rejected. The trade restrictions currently in place will remain until such time as your species demonstrates the maturity necessary for full participation in galactic society." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake felt the familiar burning sensation in his stomach that came with each defeat, each humiliation, each reminder that no matter what humans achieved, it would never be enough for the elder species. He thought of the colonies that struggled under economic restrictions, unable to trade freely with other species. He remembered the human merchants who had been denied access to the profitable core worlds, forced to scrape by on the edges of galactic commerce. But this time, something was different. This time, instead of the usual crushing disappointment, Jake felt something else rising in his chest. It was a cold, clear certainty that cut through years of frustrated hope and diplomatic patience. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They would never be accepted. No matter how long humans waited, no matter how much they proved themselves, the answer would always be the same. Jake stood slowly, his movement causing a ripple of surprise through the chamber. Delegates who had been preparing to move on to other business suddenly focused their attention on the human ambassador. Lisa Parker looked up from her notes, her pen frozen over the tablet as she sensed something different in her superior's posture. "Chancellor," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space, "I want to thank you and this council for a valuable lesson." The Zeltharian leader tilted his crystalline head, confusion evident in the way his internal light patterns shifted. "Ambassador?" Jake adjusted his jacket, a simple gesture that somehow carried the weight of final decision. "You have taught humanity exactly where we stand in this galaxy. You have shown us, with perfect clarity, that we will never be welcome as equals among the elder species. For 15 years, we have sought your approval, your acceptance, your permission to take our place in galactic society." The chamber had gone completely silent. Even the ambient hum of the life support systems seemed muted as every being present focused on the human standing at the center of the room. "Today, you have given us the greatest gift possible," Jake continued. "You have freed us from the illusion that we need your permission for anything." He turned to Lisa Parker, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "Please record this for transmission to Earth and all human colonies." Jake faced the council one final time, his voice steady and clear. "The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We renounce all treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic obligations with Council member species. Human space is now closed to all non-human traffic." The explosion of noise that followed was unlike anything the council chamber had ever witnessed. Delegates leaped to their feet, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of protest, outrage, and disbelief. The Morgani tanks bubbled violently as their occupants flashed urgent warning patterns. The Crick Queen's mandibles clattered so rapidly they created a sound like machine gun fire. Through it all, Jake Morrison walked steadily toward the chamber exit, his aide falling into step beside him. Their footsteps echoed off the crystal walls, each step marking the end of an era. Behind them, the representatives of galactic civilization struggled to comprehend what had just happened. No species, had ever voluntarily left the Council. The very idea was unthinkable. The Council represented order, stability, the accumulated wisdom of ages. To reject, it was to reject civilization itself. But as the chamber doors closed behind the departing humans, a new reality began to dawn on the assembled delegates. 4. The first time in galactic history, a species had chosen independence over acceptance. The implications of that choice would reshape the galaxy in ways none of them could yet imagine. The breaking point had been reached, and there would be no going back. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the massive colony ship New Horizon and watched as Earth grew smaller in the rear viewports. Behind her stretched the largest fleet in human history, thousands of ships carrying millions of people. Toward an uncertain future in the Outer Rim, the sight should have filled her with dread. But instead, she felt something she had not experienced in years: hope. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Morrison walked out of the council chambers, and humanity had wasted no time in making good on his promise. The withdrawal from Galactic. Society was happening with military precision and quiet determination. Every human colony in council space was being evacuated, every trade agreement terminated, every diplomatic tie severed with surgical care. Amy activated the fleet communication system, and her voice carried to every ship in the convoy. All vessels, this is New Horizon Actual. We are now beyond the Sol System defense perimeter. Welcome to the first day of human independence. The response came back as thousands of voices speaking in unison across the fleet channels. Civilian, transports, cargo haulers, military escorts, and research vessels all acknowledged her words with enthusiasm that had been missing from human space for far too long. These were not refugees fleeing in panic, but pioneers choosing freedom over SUBJUGATION. Dr. Kevin Walsh monitored the exodus from his command center aboard the flagship, his screens displaying the systematic evacuation of human settlements across Council space. New Geneva was empty now, its industrial complexes shut down and sealed, but left intact. Port Victoria had been abandoned just days ago, its orbital shipyards closed, and its population relocated to the fleet. Dozens of other colonies were following the same pattern: orderly withdrawal with no destruction, no sabotage, just absence. The economic impact on council space was immediate and devastating. Human traders had operated the most efficient cargo networks in the galaxy, their ships moving goods between worlds with speed and reliability that other species could not match. Now those networks simply ceased to exist. Shipping lanes that had hummed with activity for decades went silent overnight. The Saltharian Chancellor had sent increasingly desperate messages to Earth, demanding explanations, but the automated response system simply repeated the same message. The United Earth Federation no longer recognizes council authority over human affairs. Please direct all inquiries to your local diplomatic archives. Amy smiled as she read the latest intelligence reports. The Council was discovering what it meant to lose the species that had quietly become the backbone of interstellar commerce. Cargo was piling up on loading docks across civilized space as other species struggled to fill the gaps left by human logistics companies. The Mordani were particularly affected. Their aquatic cities depended on food imports and human cargo. Ships had delivered with clockwork regularity. "Captain," called Lieutenant Ben Cooper from the navigation station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the advanced scouts." Amy turned toward the communications console. "Put it through." The face of Captain Steve Bennett appeared on the main screen, his expression bright with excitement. Steve commanded the exploration vessel Far Horizon, one of the fast ships that had been sent ahead to survey potential colony sites in the Outer Rim. His mission was crucial to the success of the entire exodus. "Amy, you need to see this." Steve sighed, his voice crackling through the long-range transmission. We've found paradise out here. The third planet in the Kepler 442 system has everything we need. Breathable atmosphere, abundant water, mineral deposits that make Earth look poor by comparison. And the best part? No council regulations, no territorial disputes, no restrictions on what we can build or how fast we can grow. The bridge crew exchanged glances of relief and anticipation. Finding suitable worlds had been their greatest concern. The council had always insisted that the outer rim was dangerous and unsuitable for colonization. But Steve's reports suggested otherwise. There's more, Steve continued. We've surveyed 17 systems so far, and every single one has worlds that could support human life. Some of them have resources we've never seen before. There are energy crystals on Kepler 438b that could revolutionize our power systems. The asteroid belts in the Ross 128 system contain metals that could build 1,000 fleets. Amy felt a surge of excitement. The Council had always controlled access to the richest systems, forcing humanity to make do with less desirable territories. Now it seemed that the areas they had been forbidden to explore were actually the most valuable in the galaxy dot back on Earth. Admiral Paul Hayes oversaw the final phase of the withdrawal from his orbital command station. The Sol system had been transformed into a fortress, its defense platforms and automated systems programmed to politely but firmly redirect all non-human traffic. No council ship would be fired upon, but none would be permitted to enter human space without explicit permission. The transformation of Earth's orbital infrastructure had been remarkable. Freed from council restrictions on defensive installations, human engineers had built weapon systems and shield generators that surpassed anything in their previous arsenal. The entire system was now protected by technology that the Council had. Forbidden humans to develop. Paul reviewed the latest reports from the evacuation zones. New Terra colony had been abandoned yesterday, its population of 2 million loaded onto transport ships and sent to join the main fleet. The colonists had left behind factories, homes, and schools, but they had taken something more valuable, their knowledge and their determination to build something better. The speed of the evacuation had surprised even the human planners. There had been no protests, no resistance to the withdrawal orders. After 15 years of second-class treatment, the human population was eager to start fresh in space, where they could control their own destiny. Meanwhile, the first reports of council panic were reaching human intelligence networks. The Crick Queen had issued emergency orders to her hive worlds, trying to replace human maintenance workers who had kept their technology functioning. The insectoid species had superior numbers and organization, but they lacked the human talent. For improvisation and repair, the Mordani were facing even more serious problems. Their underwater cities depended on atmospheric processors that human engineers had designed and maintained. Without human technical support, several major population centers were beginning to experience life support failures. Captain Rodriguez received another transmission from the advance scouts, this time from Commander Lisa Hayes, who was surveying the outer edge of the rim territories. Lisa's ship had discovered something that would change everything. "Captain, we found evidence of ancient installations out here," Lisa reported. "They appear to be automated factories, possibly millions of years old, but still functional. The technology is unlike anything we've seen before. If we can learn to operate these facilities, we could have industrial capacity that rivals the entire council combined." Amy stared at the transmission in amazement. The outer rim was not the barren wasteland the council had described. It was a treasure trove of opportunities that had been deliberately hidden from humanity. Dr. Walsh joined Amy at the communication station. "Do you think they knew?" he asked quietly. "Do you think the council knew what was out here?" Amy considered the question. The elder species had controlled galactic civilization for thousands of years. They had detailed maps of every system, comprehensive surveys of every world. The idea that they had somehow overlooked the riches of the Outer Rim seemed impossible. "They knew," she said finally. "They kept us away from all of this on purpose. They wanted to make sure we stayed dependent on them." The realization sent a chill through the bridge crew. The Council had not just denied humanity equal treatment. They had actively worked to keep humans weak and dependent. The restrictions, the trade limitations, the territorial boundaries had all been designed to prevent humanity from discovering their true potential. But now that potential was about to be unleashed. In the Outer Rim, free from Council oversight and restrictions, humanity would finally have the chance to show what they were truly capable of achieving. Amy looked out at the stars ahead, no longer seeing them as distant lights, but as destinations, waiting to be reached. Behind them lay a galaxy that had rejected humanity's attempts at peaceful integration. Ahead lay unlimited possibilities for growth, discovery, and freedom. The Exodus was more than just a withdrawal from Council space. It was humanity's declaration of independence from a system that had never wanted them as equals. Now they would build their own civilization, one that would be stronger and more prosperous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The greatest. Migration in human history continued toward the Outer Rim, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species finally free to determine its own fate. 2 years had passed since humanity left Council space, and the galaxy had become a place divided. Ambassador Chun Wei of the Zeltharian hegemony stared at the economic reports scattered across his desk and felt a growing sense of dread. Numbers told a story that his government refused to acknowledge. The galactic economy was collapsing without human participation. Trade volumes had dropped by 40% across all major shipping lanes. The efficient cargo networks that humans had operated were gone, replaced by slower and more expensive alternatives that other species struggled to maintain. Entire sectors that had depended on human logistics were experiencing shortages of basic goods. Food, medical supplies, and manufactured items sat rotting in warehouses because no one could move them efficiently between worlds. Chon activated his private communication terminal and connected to his counterpart on the Mordani homeworld. Aquatic being that appeared on his screen looked exhausted, his bioluminescent patterns dim and erratic. "The situation grows worse each day," the Mordani diplomat reported. 3 more of our deep-sea cities have gone dark this week. Without human engineers to maintain the atmospheric processors, we are losing population centers faster than we can evacuate them. Our own technicians cannot repair the systems that humans designed. Chun nodded grimly. The same story was being repeated across Council space. The Crick Hive worlds were experiencing similar problems with their industrial complexes. The Vorthic energy beings found their containment systems failing without human maintenance crews. Even the mighty Zeltharian Empire was struggling to keep its vast territorial holdings functioning properly. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim, humanity was building something unprecedented. Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the observation deck of the newly completed military academy on New Terra and watched as another class of young officers practiced combat maneuvers in the training grounds below. The academy had been constructed in just 18 months, a feat that would have been impossible under Council building regulations. The motto carved above the academy entrance read simply, "Never again." Those 2 words captured the determination that drove every aspect of human development in their new territory. Never again would they allow themselves to be dependent on other species. Never again would they accept second-class treatment. Never again would they seek permission to achieve their potential. The academy itself was a marvel of human engineering, built using techniques that the Council had forbidden as too dangerous or too advanced. The structure could withstand planetary bombardment and continue functioning. Its training facilities included gravity manipulation chambers, quantum combat simulators, and weapon testing ranges that pushed the boundaries of known technology. Lisa watched as captain. Dan Cooper led a group of cadets through advanced tactical exercises. These young people had never known the frustration of council restrictions. They had grown up free to explore, to innovate, to dream without limits. The difference was visible in everything they did. They moved with confidence, thought with creativity, and approached problems with solutions that their elders would never have considered. Dr. Rachel Stone was experiencing the same freedom in her research laboratory on the industrial world of New Geneva. Without council oversight committees and research restrictions, her team had made breakthrough after breakthrough in faster-than-light technology. Their latest achievement was quantum, tunneling drives that could move ships across vast distances in a fraction of the time required by traditional methods. The implications are staggering, Rachel explained to her research team as they reviewed their latest test results. We can now travel between star systems in hours instead of weeks. Our exploration fleets can survey the entire outer rim in less time than it took the Council to approve a single research proposal. The quantum tunneling technology was just one of many innovations that had emerged from human freedom. Engineer Tony Miller had designed self-sustaining orbital habitats that could support millions of people without external resources. Physicist Sarah Johnson had developed energy shields that made human ships virtually invulnerable to conventional weapons. Computer scientist Mark Wilson had created artificial intelligence systems that could manage entire planetary economies with perfect efficiency. Each breakthrough built upon the others, creating a cascade of technological advancement that accelerated with each passing month. The humans in the Outer Rim were not just surviving their exile. They were evolving beyond anything they had been able to achieve under Council rule. Admiral Paul Hayes reviewed the latest intelligence reports from his command center in Earth orbit. Independent traders brave enough to venture beyond Council space were returning with stories that seemed almost too incredible to believe. They described human cities that sparkled like jewels in the darkness of space, their architecture flowing and organic in ways that defied traditional engineering. They spoke of ships that moved like living things, their hulls rippling with energy patterns that made them appear alive. Most disturbing for the Council were reports of human happiness. The traders described populations that seemed genuinely content with their lives, people who worked with enthusiasm and creativity that had been missing during their time under Council authority. Children laughed in parks built from crystallized starlight. Artists created sculptures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Musicians composed symphonies that could only be heard in zero gravity. The contrast with Council territories was becoming stark. Where human space buzzed with innovation and growth, the elder species struggled with stagnation and decline. The careful political balance that had maintained galactic civilization for millennia was crumbling as each species discovered how dependent they had become on human capabilities. Shun Wei received another disturbing report from his intelligence division. Human exploration fleets had discovered ruins of an ancient civilization in the far reaches of the Outer Rim. The archaeological evidence suggested that this mysterious species had possessed technology far beyond anything the Council had ever achieved. More importantly, the humans appeared to be successfully reverse engineering these ancient systems. If they learn to use that technology, Chon's intelligence chief warned, they will possess capabilities that make our entire military obsolete. We are not just facing human independence anymore. We may be looking at human superiority. The thought sent chills through the diplomatic community. For thousands of years, the elder species had maintained their dominance through superior technology and accumulated knowledge. The idea that humans could surpass them in just a few years of independence challenged everything they believed about galactic hierarchy. Back on New Terra, Commander Hayes was training her latest class of officers in something the Council had never imagined: warfare designed specifically to counter elder species tactics. The humans had studied their former oppressors carefully during their 15 years of subjugation. They knew the weaknesses of Zeltharian crystal armor, the vulnerabilities of Mordani aquatic systems, the behavioral patterns of crick hive tactics. Remember, Lisa told her students, we are no longer bound by council rules of engagement. We do not fight for territory or resources. We fight for the right to exist as free beings. That gives us advantages our enemies cannot comprehend. The cadets absorbed her words with the intensity of those who understood that their training might soon be put to real use. Reports from the border regions suggested that some council species were becoming aggressive in their attempts to force human compliance. Military buildups were reported along the boundaries between council space and the outer rim. Tony Miller was addressing these concerns with his latest project, defensive installations that made human territory virtually impregnable. Using technology derived from the ancient ruins, he had created fortress worlds that could withstand attacks from entire fleets. Each human system was now protected by defenses that operated on principles the Council could not understand or counter. The isolation was complete, but it was not the weakness the Council had expected. Instead of collapsing without galactic support, humanity had discovered strength they never knew they possessed. Free from external constraints, they had unleashed their full potential and created something that surpassed their wildest dreams. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the price of arrogance. By rejecting humanity's attempts at peaceful cooperation, the elder species had inadvertently created their greatest potential rival. The humans they had dismissed as primitive upstarts were becoming something far more dangerous. Equals who no longer needed or wanted council approval. As the second year of separation drew to a close, both sides prepared for an uncertain future. The council faced economic collapse and technological stagnation. Humanity faced unlimited possibilities in a realm where they answered to no one but themselves. The isolation had revealed the truth that neither side had fully understood. Humanity had never needed the Council's permission to be great. They had only needed the freedom to prove it. The first warning came from a deep space monitoring station on the edge of Zeltharian territory. Operator Zixthai had been tracking routine, stellar phenomena when his sensors detected something that made his crystalline structure vibrate with fear. The readings showed massive energy signatures moving through the galactic core, signatures that matched nothing in the databases of known civilizations. Within hours, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The Devourers had awakened from their million-year slumber and were consuming worlds at an unprecedented rate. The ancient machine intelligence that had once brought galactic civilization to its knees was active again, and their hunger for resources seemed infinite. Chancellor Velthur convened an emergency session of the Galactic Council as reports flooded in from across the core regions. Entire star systems were going dark as the mechanical horrors swept outward from the galactic center. Their ships moved like living swarms, adapting to every defense and overwhelming any resistance through sheer numbers and relentless efficiency. Kethver system has gone silent, reported the Mordani representative, his bioluminescent patterns flickering with panic. 17 billion souls simply gone. The automated distress beacons transmitted for 3 hours before they too were silenced. The Crick Queen clicked her mandibles in agitation as she reviewed the tactical displays. Our hive fleets in Sector 7 have engaged the enemy. Initial reports suggest our weapons are ineffective. The Devourer ships appear to absorb energy, weapons, and convert them into additional power for their systems. Chancellor Velthur felt the weight of command pressing down on his crystalline shoulders. The Council had faced many threats over the millennia, but the Devourers represented something beyond their experience. These were not organic beings seeking territory or resources in any conventional sense. They were a force of pure consumption, turning matter and energy into more of themselves in an endless cycle of growth. What is the status of our defensive preparations? The Chancellor asked his military advisors. General Mordix, the Council's supreme military commander, displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas already consumed by the Devourers, while blue zones showed Council territories still under their protection. The red was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Our fleets are mobilizing, but coordination between member species remains problematic, Mordex admitted. The Zeltharian Fourth Fleet refuses to operate under Crick command structures. The Mordani insist on aquatic support for their vessels, which limits deployment options. The Vorthic energy beings cannot interface properly with solid matter weapon systems. The same political divisions that had characterized Council operations for thousands of years were now proving fatal in the face of an existential threat. Each species had developed military doctrines suited to their particular biology and culture, but these diverse approaches could not be integrated quickly enough to mount an effective defense. Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their relentless advance. Their strategy was brutally simple: consume everything in their path and use the absorbed resources to build more ships and weapons. Every victory made them stronger, while every defeat weakened the defenders. It was a mathematical certainty that they would eventually overwhelm any force that stood against them. On the bridge of his flagship Deep Current, Admiral Kelthus of the Mordani received reports that filled him with despair. His aquatic crews were some of the finest naval tacticians in the galaxy, but their weapons and ships had been designed for conflicts between organic species. Against the adaptive technologies of the Devourers, their carefully planned battle formations were proving useless. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "the enemy has broken through our defensive line at Proxima 7. They are advancing toward the Tethys colonies." Kelthus watched the tactical display with growing horror. The Devourers moved like a plague across the stars, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. Their ships seemed to anticipate every tactical maneuver, countering strategies that had been perfected over centuries of warfare between Council species. In desperation, Chancellor Valthur authorized the use of planet-killer weapons that had been banned for thousands of years. The massive devices were deployed in the path of the Devourer advance, creating artificial supernovas that should have destroyed everything within light years of their detonation points. The weapons functioned perfectly, sterilizing entire star systems and creating barriers of radiation that would have stopped any known form of life. But when the energy signatures cleared, the Devourers were still there. They had somehow absorbed the destructive energy and converted it into new forms of technology that made them even more dangerous. As the crisis deepened, someone in the council chambers spoke the words that everyone had been thinking, but no one had dared to voice. "What about the humans?" The suggestion created an uncomfortable silence. For 3 years, the council had maintained that humanity's departure was good riddance. They had convinced themselves that the troublesome species with their aggressive tendencies and disruptive technologies were better off in exile. Now, facing annihilation, some were beginning to wonder if human military capabilities might be useful. The humans withdrew from galactic society, reminded the Crick Queen. They made it clear that they no longer consider themselves part of our civilization. But they are still in danger, argued the Vorthic representative. If the Devourers consume all of Council space, they will eventually reach the Outer Rim. Surely the humans understand that their isolation cannot protect them forever. Chancellor Velther found himself in an impossible position. Pride and political reality demanded that the Council handle the crisis without outside assistance. But the military reports made it clear that they were losing the war badly. Every day brought news of more worlds consumed, more fleets destroyed, more populations lost to the mechanical hunger of the Devourers. the decision was made to send a diplomatic mission to the human border. A small fleet of council ships would travel to the edge of the outer rim and request a meeting with human leadership. It was a humiliating necessity, but extinction was a worse alternative. The fleet was led by the same chancellor who had dismissed humanity's requests 3 years earlier. His flagship approached the human border with ceremonial flags and diplomatic protocols, broadcasting messages of peaceful intent on all frequencies. The response came from a human patrol vessel commanded by Captain Dan Cooper. The young officer appeared on the communication screen with an expression of polite curiosity, as if the arrival of the Council's most powerful leader was merely an interesting development rather than a momentous occasion. "This is Captain Cooper of the Human Border Patrol," Dan said calmly. "You are entering restricted space. Please state your business." Chancellor Velther felt his crystalline structure flush with embarrassment at being addressed so casually by someone he considered barely more than a child. But necessity forced him to swallow his pride and deliver his message. "Captain Cooper, I am Chancellor Velther of the Galactic Council. I request an audience with your leadership regarding a matter of galactic importance." Dan's expression did not change. "One moment, Chancellor. I'll need to check with my superiors." The communication went silent for several minutes, leaving the Council delegation to wait in space like common petitioners. When the channel reopened, a different face appeared on the screen. It was Jake Morrison, the former ambassador who had walked out of the council chambers 3 years ago. But he was no longer wearing diplomatic robes. Instead, he wore the uniform of an admiral in the Human Defense Force. "Chancellor," Jake said with a slight smile, "how unexpected to see you again. I trust your journey from Nexus Prime was pleasant?" The casual tone stung worse than any insult. Jake Morrison was treating the most powerful being in the galaxy like an old acquaintance, rather than showing the deference that his position demanded. "Admiral Morrison," the Chancellor began, forcing himself to use the human's new title. "The galaxy faces a threat that endangers all civilized life. The Devourers have returned and are consuming Council territories at an alarming rate. We request your assistance in mounting a coordinated defense." Jake's expression remained neutral. "I see. And what exactly are you asking of us, Chancellor?" "Your fleets, your technology, your tactical expertise. The Council offers full partnership in exchange for human military support." The silence that followed stretched for long seconds. When Jake finally spoke, his words carried the weight of history. "Chancellor, 3 years ago you made the Council's position very clear. You told us that humanity lacked the wisdom and maturity to participate in galactic affairs. You denied our requests for equal representation and territorial rights. You informed us that we were not welcome as partners in your civilization." The Chancellor felt his internal structure growing cold as he realized where this conversation was leading. "Now you come to us in crisis, offering partnership only because you need our help. Tell me, Chancellor, what has changed? Are humans suddenly wise enough for your council? Have we somehow matured in the 3 years since you rejected us?" Jake leaned forward slightly, his expression hardening. "Or is it possible that you only value us when you need something from us?" The Devourer fleet reached the outer edge of human space exactly 2 weeks after Chancellor Velther's humiliating rejection at the border. Admiral Sarah Collins watched their approach from the command bridge of the human battleship Defiance. Her expression calm, despite the magnitude of the threat bearing down on her forces. The mechanical swarms that had devastated Council territory looked even more terrifying up close. Their ships moved with organic fluidity, despite being composed entirely of metal and energy. Each vessel seemed to pulse with absorbed life force from the billions of beings they had consumed during their advance through the Fun's galaxy. "Admiral," reported Captain Tony Miller from the tactical station, "enemy contact in 47 minutes. Fleet composition shows approximately 12,000 vessels of various configurations. They appear to be adapting their formations based on scanned data from Council military encounters. Sarah nodded calmly. Unlike the Council forces that had faced the Devourers, the human fleet was not divided by political considerations or species-specific tactical doctrines. Every ship in the Defense Force operated under unified command structures and shared technological standards. More importantly, they had spent 3 years developing strategies specifically designed to counter threats that conventional weapons could not handle. Signal all vessels, Sarah commanded. Implement Battle Plan Omega. Quantum shielding to maximum. Weapons free on my mark. The human ships moved with precision that would have amazed the Council observers if any had been present to witness it. Each vessel took its assigned position in a formation that had been practiced countless times but never tested in actual combat. The crews worked with the efficiency of people who had trained together for years, without the bureaucratic interference that plagued Council military operations. The first contact between human and Devourer forces took place near the Kepler Station, a research outpost on the edge of human territory. Commander Mike Thompson commanded the station's defenses, watching as the mechanical horrors approached his position with inexorable certainty. "Sir," called Lieutenant Jenny Walsh from the sensor station, "the enemy is attempting to interface with our computer systems. They appear to be trying to convert our technology to their own purposes." Mike smiled grimly. The Devourers had succeeded in this tactic against every Council system they had encountered, turning the Defenders' own weapons against them. But human technology had been developed with exactly this threat in mind. "Activate the quantum firewalls," Mike ordered. "Let's see how they handle isolation protocols." The station's defensive systems engaged, creating barriers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Devourer interface attempts struck the firewalls and simply stopped, unable to penetrate defenses that operated on principles they had never encountered before. The mechanical attackers responded by increasing their assault intensity, bringing massive energy weapons to bear on the station's shields. But the human defensive technology had been derived from ancient ruins discovered in the Outer Rim, incorporating concepts that predated even the Devourers themselves. "Shields holding at 97%, reported the defense coordinator. "Enemy weapons appear to be having minimal effect." Mike activated the station's experimental weapon system, technology that had been forbidden under Council regulations, but developed freely in human space. The quantum cascade generator charged to full power, creating a field effect that would either save them or destroy everything within a light-year radius. "All personnel to emergency stations," Mike announced over the station-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. We are about to make history." The cascade weapon fired, releasing energy that folded space itself around the attacking Devourer fleet. The mechanical ships found themselves trapped in a quantum bubble where the normal laws of physics no longer applied. Their adaptive systems, so effective against conventional weapons, could not function in an environment where cause and effect operated according to different rules. The destruction was total and instantaneous. 1,200 Devourer vessels simply ceased to exist, their matter converted into pure energy that fed back into the cascade effect. But more importantly, the quantum field created a permanent barrier that the remaining Devourers could not cross. Admiral Collins received the report from Kepler Station with satisfaction. "Confirmed kill on enemy advance force. The Kepler barrier is stable and holding. Enemy main fleet is unable to proceed further into human space." The success at Kepler Station had implications beyond military victory. The quantum cascade had created a protective zone that extended beyond human territory, inadvertently shielding the remaining Council systems behind it. The same species that had rejected humanity 3 years ago now found themselves protected by human sacrifice and human technology. News of the barrier's creation spread throughout both human and council space within hours. The mechanical plague that had consumed half the galaxy had been stopped cold by a defensive system that the council's greatest scientists could not even understand, let alone replicate. In council territory, the surviving populations reacted with a mixture of relief and humiliation. They owed their continued existence to the same species they had dismissed as primitive and dangerous. The irony was not lost on anyone involved. Chancellor Velther stood in the ruins of what had once been the Grand Council Chamber on Nexus Prime. The Devourers had reached the capital world before being stopped by the human barrier, leaving behind empty cities and silent installations. The seat of galactic government had become a monument to the price of arrogance. His communication system activated, showing the face of Admiral Jake Morrison, calling from human space. The former ambassador now held more real power than any council member had ever possessed. Chancellor, Jake said simply, I believe we need to talk. The meeting took place aboard a human relief vessel that had crossed into council space to deliver humanitarian aid to Devourer survivors. The choice of location was deliberate and symbolic. Instead of the grand diplomatic chambers that had once hosted council sessions, the representatives of two civilizations met in a simple conference room surrounded by medical supplies and emergency rations. Jake Morrison sat across from the surviving council leadership, studying faces that showed the exhaustion and defeat of beings who had lost everything they thought mattered. The Mordani representatives' bioluminescent patterns were dim and erratic. The Crick Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. The Zeltharian Chancellor's crystalline structure showed stress fractures that would never fully heal. You wanted to discuss terms, Jake said quietly. Chancellor Velther struggled to find words that could bridge the gap between their former positions and current reality. Admiral Morrison, the Council recognizes that we made errors in our previous relationship with humanity. We are prepared to offer full membership, equal representation, shared technology, and territorial concessions in exchange for continued protection and partnership. Jake listened patiently to the offer, the same terms that humanity had requested 15 years ago and been denied repeatedly. When the Chancellor finished speaking, Jake stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars that marked the boundary between human and council space. You still don't understand, Jake said finally. 3 years ago, we wanted to join your council because we thought it represented something greater than ourselves. We believed in the idea of galactic cooperation and shared prosperity. He turned back to face the assembled delegates. But you taught us something valuable when you rejected us. You showed us that we don't need your approval to be great. We don't need your permission to explore the galaxy. We don't need your cooperation to build a civilization. The council members exchanged glances of growing alarm as they began to understand where this conversation was leading. What we built in the Outer Rim, Jake continued, we built without you. Our technology, our society, our military capabilities. Our entire way of life developed independently of your influence. We proved that humanity can not only survive on its own, but thrive beyond anything we ever imagined possible. Chancellor Velther felt his internal structure growing cold as the full implications became clear. Admiral, surely you cannot mean to abandon the galaxy to its fate. The humanitarian crisis alone, will be addressed, Jake interrupted. Human relief efforts are already underway in the affected systems. We will provide medical aid, food supplies, and temporary shelter for refugees. But we will do so as an independent power offering assistance, not as members seeking your approval. The silence in the conference room stretched for long seconds as the council representatives struggled to process what they were hearing. The question is not whether you will accept us back into your council, Jake said with quiet finality. The question is whether we have any reason to accept you into our galaxy. Jake activated a holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. The map revealed the stark reality that no one wanted to acknowledge. Human territory now encompassed the richest and most strategically important regions of the galaxy. Their technology surpassed anything the Council had ever developed. Their military had proven capable of stopping threats that had overwhelmed the combined forces of the Elder species.